From the moment boys and girls enter society, they are quietly trained in very different ways. Girls are encouraged to listen to their feelings, to protect their emotional space, to put themselves first, and to never abandon their needs for anyone else. Boys, on the other hand, are taught something almost opposite. They are told to be polite, to be understanding, to be patient, and above all, to always respect women, even at the cost of their own comfort, boundaries, or truth. This difference in conditioning shapes how men and women show up in relationships later in life. For women, self-priority is framed as empowerment. She is praised for choosing herself, for walking away when she feels unhappy, and for demanding better. Society tells her that sacrificing too much is weakness, that compromise should never come at the expense of her happiness. Over time, this builds a strong internal message: my needs matter. My feelings matter. I should protect myself. This is not wrong. In fact, it creates emotional clarity and self-trust. Men, however, are taught a very different lesson. They are told that good men are accommodating. Good men are patient. Good men are respectful no matter how they are treated. From a young age, boys learn that expressing discomfort can be seen as weakness, that asserting boundaries may be interpreted as aggression, and that disagreeing too strongly risks being labeled insensitive. Slowly, respect becomes something external, something they give away, rather than something they hold within themselves. This is where the imbalance begins. A man grows up believing that respect means self-erasure. That being good means suppressing frustration, tolerating disrespect, and prioritizing harmony over honesty. Meanwhile, a woman grows up believing that self-respect means never tolerating what doesn't feel right. When these two belief systems meet in a relationship, tension is inevitable. The man often overextends. He listens more than he speaks. He adapts more than he leads. He apologizes more than he asserts. He believes that if he is respectful enough, patient enough, understanding enough, he will be valued. But respect given without self-respect does not create balance. It creates quiet resentment and emotional depletion. What's rarely discussed is that women are not attracted to men who abandon themselves. They are drawn to men who have an inner center, who value themselves, and who do not bend simply to maintain approval. When a man constantly defers, he does not come across as respectful, he comes across as unsure. And uncertainty erodes attraction far faster than disagreement ever could. This conditioning traps men in a difficult position. If they assert themselves, they fear being labeled disrespectful. If they don't, they lose respect anyway. The solution is not to abandon respect for women, but to redefine what respect truly means. Respect is not submission. Respect is mutual recognition of boundaries, values, and autonomy. A healthy dynamic requires both individuals to put themselves first in a grounded way. When a man respects himself, his respect for others becomes stronger, not weaker. It becomes rooted, calm, and confident rather than performative. Women instinctively feel the difference between a man who is respectful because he is afraid to lose approval and a man who is respectful because he knows who he is. Until men unlearn the belief that self-sacrifice equals virtue, they will continue to struggle with imbalance in relationships. Respect must begin inward, or it eventually collapses outward. And when a man finally places self-respect alongside respect for others, relationships stop feeling like a performance and start feeling like a partnership. When respect is taught as something a man gives but not something he protects for himself, relationships begin on uneven ground. Many men enter dating and relationships believing that their role is to be endlessly understanding, endlessly patient, and endlessly accommodating. They believe respect means tolerating behavior that makes them uncomfortable, staying silent when boundaries are crossed, and adjusting themselves to keep peace. What they don't realize is that respect without self-respect doesn't create harmony, it creates imbalance. Self-respect is the foundation of all healthy dynamics. Without it, respect becomes performative. A man may say all the right things, listen endlessly, and try to be supportive, but underneath, he slowly erodes his own sense of worth. He starts ignoring his intuition, he minimizes his needs. He convinces himself that discomfort is the price of being good man. Over time, this internal suppression builds frustration, resentment, and emotional exhaustion. Women can sense this imbalance even if they cannot articulate it. When a man consistently puts himself last, he unintentionally communicates that his needs are less important. This does not inspire appreciation or attraction. It creates a subtle loss of respect. Not because women want dominance over men, but because confidence, self-worth, and boundaries are the signals of a grounded individual. When those signals disappear, attraction weakens. Respect that is not anchored in self-respect turns into approval-seeking. The man begins to monitor her reactions closely. He adjusts his words to avoid conflict. He fears setting boundaries because he worries it might upset her. In trying to be respectful, he becomes emotionally reactive and dependent. Ironically, this behavior often leads to the very outcome he is trying to avoid: loss of interest, emotional distance, or being taken for granted. True respect is not silence. It is not compliance. It is not self-erasure. True respect requires clarity about what you accept, what you value, and what you will not tolerate. When a man holds this clarity, his respect becomes grounded and calm. He does not need to argue or dominate. He simply stands firm. That firmness creates safety, predictability, and balance. A relationship where one person consistently adapts while the other is encouraged to prioritize themselves will always drift toward imbalance. Equality does not mean one side bends endlessly while the other stands still. Equality means both individuals take responsibility for their own needs and communicate them honestly. When men are taught to abandon self-respect in the name of politeness, they undermine the very foundation of mutual respect. This is why boundaries are not acts of disrespect. They are acts of self-clarity. A man who says no when something feels wrong is not being difficult. He is being authentic. A man who expresses disagreement calmly is not being aggressive. He is being honest. These behaviors build respect because they demonstrate self-trust and emotional maturity. When men reclaim self-respect, something powerful happens. They stop over-explaining. They stop chasing validation. They stop tolerating dynamics that drain them. Their presence becomes steadier. Their words carry more weight. And their respect for women becomes genuine rather than transactional. Respect that flows outward without flowing inward eventually collapses. But when self-respect and respect for others coexist, relationships stabilize, attraction deepens, and both individuals feel seen rather than managed. And when a man finally learns to respect himself as much as he was taught to respect others, balance returns naturally. From an early age, men are conditioned to measure their worth by how well they accommodate others, especially women. They are told that being a good man means being agreeable, supportive, and emotionally available at all times. Meanwhile, women are encouraged to prioritize their feelings, their boundaries, and their personal growth. On the surface, both lessons sound healthy, but when combined without balance, they create a quiet psychological conflict that shows up later in relationships. The man grows up believing that love is earned through restraint. He learns to swallow frustration, to downplay his own needs, and to believe that asserting himself is selfish or rude. He becomes highly attuned to how others feel, but poorly connected to how he feels. Over time, this creates a man who is externally respectful, but internally disconnected. He knows how to give, but not how to stand. This conditioning leads many men to confuse emotional suppression with maturity. They think strength means silence. They believe leadership means sacrifice without limits. But what actually happens is emotional debt. Every unspoken boundary, every ignored instinct, every time he chooses peace over truth, that debt grows. And emotional debt always comes due, often as resentment, burnout, or sudden withdrawal. Women, on the other hand, are often taught that honoring themselves is non-negotiable. They're encouraged to speak up, to leave situations that no longer serve them, and to put their emotional well-being first. Again, this is not inherently wrong. The problem arises when one partner is trained to prioritize self and the other is trained to deprioritize self. That dynamic cannot remain stable. In relationships, this imbalance creates confusion. The man may feel unappreciated but struggles to articulate why. He may feel invisible but believes speaking up would make him less respectful. He begins to give more, hoping it will restore harmony, not realizing that over-giving reduces polarity and weakens attraction. Respect becomes expected, not earned, and effort becomes one-sided. At the same time, the woman may feel unsupported in a different way. She senses a lack of grounded presence. She may feel that he is agreeable but not decisive, kind but not firm. This is not because she wants control, but because human psychology responds to clarity. A man who does not advocate for himself eventually stops feeling real. He becomes safe, but not solid. The critical misunderstanding is this: self-respect is not the opposite of respect for others. It is the source of it. When a man values himself, his respect carries weight. When he sets boundaries, they are calm and unemotional. When he disagrees, it is grounded, not reactive. This creates a dynamic where both people can prioritize themselves without undermining the relationship. Men were never meant to disappear inside their relationships. They were meant to show up fully. That includes opinions, limits, desires, and standards. When a man reconnects with this truth, he stops trying to earn respect and starts embodying it. He no longer negotiates his worth through compliance. He stands where he stands, and others adjust accordingly. This shift is uncomfortable at first because it goes against years of conditioning. But it is necessary. Relationships thrive not when one person sacrifices endlessly, but when both people take responsibility for their own needs and communicate them honestly. Respect that costs you yourself is not respect at all, and the moment a man understands this, everything begins to rebalance. When men are taught to always respect women without being taught how to respect themselves, relationships. A major issue modern men face in relationships is the belief that love is proven through constant sacrifice, emotional availability, and self-erasure. Many men are conditioned to think that the more they give, the more they will be valued. So they overextend, they cancel their plans, they tolerate disrespect, they explain themselves endlessly. They put their own goals on hold to keep peace. And at first, this looks like kindness. It looks like loyalty. But over time, it quietly drains attraction and creates an unhealthy dynamic. The truth is, desire does not grow in an environment where one person abandons themselves. When a man consistently puts his needs last, he sends a subconscious message: my life is flexible. My boundaries are weak. My purpose is negotiable. Not because women are malicious or calculating, but because human psychology responds to strength, direction, and self-trust. When someone shows they are willing to lose themselves for approval, respect slowly erodes, even if affection remains. This is where many men get confused. They think, I'm doing everything right. I'm respectful. I'm present. I'm available. But availability without standards becomes desperation. Presence without backbone becomes predictability. And respect without self-respect becomes submission. None of these create long-term polarity or desire. They create comfort at best and resentment at worst. Healthy relationships require tension, not conflict, but polarity. Two whole individuals choosing each other, not one person orbiting the other. When a man prioritizes his mission, his health, his discipline, and his personal growth, he is not neglecting the relationship. He is strengthening it because he brings energy, direction, and groundedness into the dynamic. He becomes someone who shares his life, not someone who waits to be included in hers. This does not mean being cold, distant, or emotionally unavailable. It means being selective with your energy. It means saying no without guilt. It means not explaining your boundaries as if they are crimes. It means understanding that love does not require you to tolerate behavior that slowly diminishes you. Respect is not something you ask for loudly. It is something you demonstrate quietly through consistent self-alignment. Many men fear that if they stop over giving, they will be abandoned. But the opposite is often true. When a man stops chasing validation and starts living from a place of purpose, his presence becomes valuable. His attention becomes meaningful. His commitment becomes earned, not expected. And when he gives, it is felt more deeply because it is not automatic. The irony is that self-respect creates safety. When a man can stand on his own, make decisions, and walk away from what does not align with him, he becomes emotionally reliable. Not because he clings, but because he chooses. That choice carries weight. It creates trust. It creates desire rooted in admiration, not obligation. Men were never meant to disappear inside relationships. They were meant to grow within them. A relationship should complement a man's life, not consume it. When he understands this, everything shifts. He stops performing. He stops over-explaining. He stops negotiating his worth. And in that grounded state, He finally shows up as someone who can be respected long term. Respect starts the moment a man refuses to abandon himself to be loved. The final concept ties everything together. Respect in a relationship must be reciprocal, not one-directional, and a man must be willing to walk away from dynamics that consistently violate his standards. This is where many men struggle the most because they have been taught that endurance equals virtue. They believe staying, tolerating, and being the bigger person at all costs makes them honorable. But endurance without boundaries does not create love, it creates imbalance. When a man is afraid to leave, his presence loses weight, not because leaving is the goal, but because the option must exist. Choice is powerful only when it is real. If a woman knows, consciously or unconsciously, that no matter what happens, he will stay, adapt, and self-correct endlessly, the relationship shifts. Effort becomes optional, accountability softens, and over time respect quietly fades. Again, not out of cruelty, but out of human nature responding to leverage and self-worth. Walking away does not mean threatening to leave, sulking, or using distance as manipulation. It means genuinely knowing within yourself that your life will continue with strength and direction, whether this relationship survives or not. That internal certainty changes how you speak, how you listen, and how you respond. You no longer negotiate your core values. You no longer argue to be understood. You observe behavior, not words, and you act accordingly. Men often stay in situations that drain them because they confuse attachment with commitment. Commitment is chosen daily from a place of strength. Attachment is fear-based clinging to familiarity. When attachment drives decisions, men tolerate inconsistency, disrespect, emotional chaos, and misalignment because leaving feels like failure. But sometimes leaving is the most self-respecting move a man can make. A woman does not need a man who stays no matter what. She needs a man who stays because the relationship is healthy, aligned, and mutually respectful. The first man is predictable. The second man is chosen. That difference matters deeply over the long term. Stability rooted in fear is fragile. Stability rooted in choice is powerful. This is also where masculine leadership shows itself. Leadership is not control. It is clarity. It is knowing what you stand for and refusing to betray it for comfort or approval. When a man lives this way, he does not need to demand respect or chase validation. His actions set the tone. He teaches others how to treat him by what he allows and what he calmly removes himself from. Many men worry that adopting this mindset will make them lonely or cold. In reality, it filters their lives. It removes relationships built on imbalance and attracts those built on mutual effort. The connections that remain are fewer but stronger, calmer, more honest, and far more fulfilling. The most important shift is internal. When a man stops viewing relationships as something he must preserve at all costs, he starts viewing them as something that must earn a place in his life. This does not make him selfish, it makes him whole. And wholeness is what allows real intimacy to exist without resentment. A man who can walk away is not rejecting love, he is protecting the conditions that allow love to last.